Hey, good morning, everyone. Hope everyone has had a great JNUC. Unfortunately, we are slowly coming to an end. Got a couple more good sessions left today, hopefully. And we got a really exciting one right now. We have some folks from Salesforce here to talk to you. Their session is called From Zero Touch to Hero, Streamlining Mac Provisioning with Salesforce In-House Apps and Open Source Tools. Super excited to hear all about this. There will be Q&A at the end as well, as you've come to become accustomed to that. Head on to that app that y'all are used to. Throw your questions in there. Upvote, downvote. I don't know. Can you downvote? Is that a thing here? I don't know.
Don't tell them to downvote.
That's true. That's really depressing.
Yeah.
Upvote. Be nice to your people. And we'll take questions at the end. So without further ado, let's give them a round of applause.
Awesome. Thank you, Jesse. Appreciate it. How's everybody doing today? Yeah, that's the day after JNUC party. That's what that is. Yeah, my voice is a little bit scratchy. I'm not sure if it was me yelling a lot last night or the fish tacos in 97-degree weather, but we made it here. I'm assuming at some point the slides will come up. But anyway, he said this really long title, right? I was on paternity leave, and I had 4 hours to submit this to Jamf. So I just went to ChatGPT, and I was like, hey, let's move back here. I went to ChatGPT, and I said, hey, this is what I want to talk about at JNUC. Can you come up with a title? And that's what it was, From Zero Touch to Hero Touch. I got rid of the hero touch, because that's awkward. And then it came out like, oh, how Salesforce focuses on in-house apps and so on and so forth. So that kind of gives you the rundown. So otherwise, thank you, everyone, for coming. I really appreciate it. You could have been anywhere in the world, but you're here with us. Actually, you could have been any other session, but haha, we won. We took them. So thank you so much. So I'm here to talk about what we do at Salesforce and how we're successful. So a little bit, the first slide we're going to see here, my name is Amit Vasani. Super excited to be here. I'm here with my colleagues, Kirk Schaefer and Haley Schauman. Big shout out for them right now. We're quick. We have a jam-packed agenda. So some of it is going to seem quick, and that's because we really want time to focus on the really, really cool thing, which is coming at the end. We have to keep it at the end, right? It's your little hook, line, and sinker. So let's cover the agenda. We're going to go over some open source apps that we introduced into our environment. As you can see, Einstein and Cody are testing out, some unnamed virtual reality thing. We're going to talk about an in-house app that we created. We're going to talk about how we communicate with our users and keep them engaged. And then, of course, the bottom one, which is our hook, line, and sinker, our first in the industry, really, 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 really cool thing. So first up, it's helpful to know where we stand by the numbers. So Salesforce focuses on user experience. We tend to drive and ask our users, what is it that allows them to work in the most efficient manner? So, well, we have 12 admins and engineers, developers, that do amazing work on my team. As you can see, Cody just came in from his bed at 8:58 a.m., rolled out, signed in for his work from home session, and he's gone at 9:02, doing laundry. Like how we all do really good work working from home? Yeah, that's Cody. We have 70,000 active Macs in our environment. And it's incredible because 80% of our fleet is Mac, which is fantastic. I got to increase that number, though. So let's talk about the first piece, which is an open source tool that we use. We're going to talk about it. It's called Sidekick. Sidekick is based off of the open source tool called the Support app. Support app is awesome. We're allowed to brand it. We're allowed to increase and customize it. I see some head nods in the back, which is you probably use it too. It's pretty great. We're allowed to have branded elements, and we focus on the user to deliver what is best for them. So let's take a look at some screenshots. So Support app, or Sidekick in our instance, is a menu bar app. The first time you launch it, you kind of get like a little intro. This is what this app is going to do. Maybe gives you diagnosis, what am I saying? Diagnosis, gives you helpful links, things to help the user get to where they need to. Once you hit OK, you get our design of what those modules look like. Things like computer name, last time the user rebooted, if they have any software updates or what version that they're running on now. And I know most of you are looking at my screenshots saying, how come he didn't plug in his Mac before he took these screenshots? I don't know. I have no answer for you. And if you take your mouse and you hover over one of these items, you can customize it to give you additional information. So in this screenshot, we're hovering over computer name, and now we're getting the model in which we work on. You'll see on the bottom we have some other icons, such as concierge, self-service, contact TechForce. TechForce is our help desk. Concierge is our knowledge base. So they're helpful links to lead the user to the right spot whenever they need it. So this is truly designed with the user in mind. We've heard tremendous feedback from our users. It's incredibly, incredibly useful. So I encourage you all to take a look at the support app and do what we did. We've got some great feedback, and we'd love to see more customers do this as well. Great. I'm going to hand it off to Kirk now to talk about provisioning. Welcome, Kirk.
Thanks, Amit. As you said, my name is Kirk Schaefer. I'm an engineer on the Mac at Salesforce team, and I'm here to talk a little bit about how we do provisioning at Salesforce. I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with the classic three-step provisioning process. First, you open the box, plug in the Mac. There is no step 3. Well, unfortunately for us, and probably a lot of you, there tends to be a step 3 or a 4 or a 5. There's been a lot of applications and solutions that have been made out there that help us get through those steps 3, 4, and 5. Things like Splash Buddy, DEP Notify, and even Jamf's own enrollment customizations. But we have some unique environment wrinkles at Salesforce. So we kind of went down the path of making our own app to kind of address those wrinkles. And that app is called Kickstart. It is a fully Swift app. We really want to have that, Mac, that native Mac look and feel, and also a very Salesforce look and feel. So you'll see kind of our fonts, our colors, even more of our characters here coming to welcome you aboard Salesforce. We have Appy and Einstein and Cody and Astro, all there to greet you on your first day. It also helps us overcome those unique wrinkles I was talking about. One of which is our 2FA authorization workflow. Well, we'll get into this a little bit more as we go through the app itself, but just kind of wanted to set up what we're doing here. And then in addition to the 2FA requirement is, anyway, there it is, a secure API that we call from the app. And the last thing it does is it kind of allows us to customize. We've got a lot of people in a lot of different regions. We also have a lot of different companies within a company, some acquisitions along the way. So we want to have the flexibility of being able to deploy custom configurations and settings and things like that, depending on who you are and where you are. The first screen here is the welcome screen. Again, you'll see our lovely characters coming to greet you and send you on the way. This sets the stage. Again, we want to build that trust in our environment, trust in our workflow, and it really kind of creates some transparency. You'll see some things like, we want you to know where you are in the process, maybe how much time is left in the process, and what we're doing along the way to kind of keep you apprised of the situation. And it also sets the user up for success. Now, along the way, we'll have different pieces of information, different instructions for how our users might be asked to interact with this app. And exactly what they should expect along the way. One of those little pieces is you might be able to see in the top right-hand corner is the network connection status. So green is good. And then we will pop up a warning that says, hey, make sure you plug in because we don't want you running out of battery during the provisioning process to kind of avoid any problems that might come from that. So the first technical screen we get to here is File Vault. We're very excited about some of the improvements that are coming in Sonoma with File Vault enablement, but for right now, we're kind of doing it the old-fashioned way, and we have it set up to run at next login. To kind of go along with the transparency and setting the user up for success process that I was talking about, you can see some screenshots and some pretty specific instructions here to make sure that the user knows what's coming, that that's going to reboot, and they're going to have to log in the next login screen. So once they're ready, they hit continue, reboot, and then we're off to the next page. Since we are a very large multinational company, we have a lot of users in a lot of different areas. And because different regions might have different requirements for their settings and configurations, we found the most efficient way to find out where you do your work is actually just to ask you. So the user can click on where they do their work most often, and they'll get any sort of customizations that come along with that. This also allows us to update Kickstart app itself dynamically. So if you choose a certain region, there might be a different help desk number or a different support email or something like that to ensure that you get the quickest and most appropriate help if you need it. So the next step is kind of our biggest environment wrinkle here. It is our 2FA authorization requirement. We use an ADCS certificate for things like Wi-Fi and VPN, but we require a strong authentication process to get scoped into that certificate. And in our environment, normally that's Okta, but the way we have set up Okta is Okta requires a certificate. So you need the certificate to get the certificate. It's a pretty big chicken and egg scenario. So what Kickstart allows us to do is leverage a few different authorization workflows. We have our own Salesforce authenticator app. So if you are an existing user and you've already set that up and you're getting a new machine, you're going through a hardware refresh, you can use that for authorization. If you're a new user, you would be getting a YubiKey. Kickstart also allows us to leverage YubiKey as that strong authorization as well for this kind of temporary authorization workflow. Once you are authenticated, we update an extension attribute on the back end via API with Kickstart to scope you into getting that certificate. I'm sure many of you have many different ways to manipulate extension attributes. We've done files, file attributes, even calling the API from the client with a policy that runs a script with encrypted strings and things like that. But because this is our ADCS certificate, we wanted to ramp up the security quite a bit on making sure that only the right people are getting scoped into the certificate. So what we've set up with Kickstart is it makes an API call to a dedicated API gateway that has a function whose sole purpose is to interact with this lone extension attribute. So the client doesn't do it, it's not a file. We leverage an API gateway with secure communication with the Kickstart app. Now, obviously there's a ton more that goes into all this stuff that I just covered, but for the sake of time and a little bit of security, I'll leave those conversations for more like direct one-on-one conversations, and feel free to ask us if you want some more details. The next piece is M&A. As I mentioned, we do a lot of acquisitions from time to time, and historically the philosophy has kind of been to treat these acquisitions as a company within a company, so a little bit of a hybrid approach. And what Kickstart allows us to do is maintain that unique stack that a company might have while also adding the pieces of the stack that we need to have them work within the Salesforce environment. And like the location, we've found that the most efficient way to figure out who they're working for is just ask them who they're working for, so they can click on the organization that they still belong to and are still working for. This also allows us to kind of do a slow migration. If we find our stacks kind of merging more and more, we can do it during hardware refresh instead of all at once and things like that. The last page that we come to in our Kickstart app is the application installs. This just ensures that we're getting our baseline applications and configurations installed and done correctly before we send the user on the way. It also kind of maintains that level of transparency that we tried to start off with. We can see here that there's time remaining, how far along we are in the process, the applications and the settings that we're installing and things like that. We also keep up with the kind of very Salesforce nature of the application. We rotate through our company values in this top banner here as Kickstart is doing the work in the background, just to kind of make sure you get those on your first day. We actually do have one more screen in the app, and that's just a really quick survey. It's a 1 through 5 rating and then a dialog box in case you want to leave a comment. We found this would enable us to get quick feedback, right? Instead of it being an email that might go out after the fact, that might get buried in the hundreds of emails that a user would get on their first couple of days and then get lost. We can just ask them directly right as soon as they're finished. It's also a great way to get really good ratings. What we do is if you rate a 4 or below, we'll kick off erase all contents and settings and send you back through the process, just to make sure you know how awesome our situation is. I'm glad you laughed because I just want to make sure you know that's a joke. Might not have been a great one, but that was a joke. We do not erase all contents and settings. We take all the feedback seriously. And I think by doing so, that's how we got to where we are today with this great experience for our end users. So now that we've talked about provisioning, I'm going to hand it off to Haley to talk a little bit about how we maintain that engagement with our users as we go forward.
Thanks, Kirk. Hi, everyone. I am Haley, and I am an infrastructure engineer on the Mac at Salesforce team, where we currently manage over 70,000 Macs. As mentioned by Kirk, it does come with some difficulty, like provisioning, which we solved with Kickstart, but there is a problem that any organization can face no matter what their fleet size is, and that is end user communication. Today, Kirk and I'll be talking about two areas of that. The first one is user notifications, and our second, and our favorite, macOS updates. As we all know, sometimes the only way for us to communicate with our users are through notifications, and you can use a number of different tools to do so, such as Jamf Helper, AppleScript, and for the Mac at Salesforce team, we use Salesforce Notifier. Salesforce Notifier is rebranded from IBM Notifier, which is an open source notification tool developed by IBM. If anyone is unfamiliar with this tool, it essentially allows you to notify your users through different notification styles like pop-ups, progress bars, alert, and banner notifications. There's a ton of information available online if you want to check out their GitHub page that goes over their features and functionalities of IBM Notifier. Now, for the Mac at Salesforce team, when we do send notifications to our users, we really focus on the user experience and how it may be impacted. For example, with notifications, it can lead to user disruption, where we interrupt someone's workflow. It can also lead to misunderstandings, where the text that is being displayed is misunderstood or misinterpreted. And in order for us to kind of reduce those risks, we really focus on the workflow of where the notification is running from. In this case, it'd be a Jamf script that we're pushing out to our environment. And we also look at the notification style. For example, we might want to use a pop-up that's a little bit more intrusive, or maybe an alert notification, which is less intrusive, especially if you have Do Not Disturb on. And by focusing on these two areas, the workflow and the notification style, we're really able to hone in on that user experience, reduce the impact it has on the user, while also meeting business requirements. Now, to give off some examples of how we've used Salesforce Notifier in our environment, we have used it to grab diagnostic information like logs. This has consisted of pop-ups and progress bars, which is great for user transparency. We have also used it to manage updates, which has been a form of pop-ups and alert notifications. And we've also used it to gather user input, which is just a form of another pop-up. Now, there's a ton of other scenarios where we've used Salesforce Notifier for, but enough about notifications. I'm going to hand it back to Kirk, who will be providing an overview of how we manage macOS updates across our fleet.
All right, so to handle macOS updates in our fleet, we use another open source tool called Nudge. I'm sure many of you are familiar with it. I'm just going to touch on it briefly here because it is part of our tool set. Nudge continues to help us maintain that kind of unified Mac experience. It's a Mac app. It looks like a Mac app because it is a Mac app. And we are able to brand it with our Salesforce stuff, so it looks like a Salesforce Mac app. So that helps us kind of, maintain that trust that we've been building since the initial screen. Another great thing about Nudge is it's a very widely used tool. So there's a ton of support in the Mac admins community. It's frequently updated, and usually any questions or problems you might have, people are willing to help you out. And it's obviously the Mac admins community is really, really resourceful and really helpful, and this tool is no exception. We use Nudge to do macOS updates and upgrades. The difference between the two would be updates would be something from, say, going 13.5.1 to 13.5.2. And then an upgrade would be going from macOS 12 to macOS 13. So we kind of use it for kind of both scenarios in our environment. And it allows us to interact with our users, give them a certain amount of time to upgrade, to notify them that there's an available upgrade, let them do it on their own time, or defer to maybe a time that's a little more convenient for them. So while we're on the subject of software update, would be a massive dereliction of my duty as a Mac admin to not kind of touch on the, shall we say, interesting journey that Software Update has taken us on for the past year or so. If you have a relationship with Apple, I would kindly request that you interact with them as much as possible on this subject. File early and file often. We're very hopeful for the declarative device management features that are upcoming and the massive improvements that that might bring us. But for now, for Software Update, again, file early, file often, and make sure you know where everyone else stands on this, because maintaining the macOS version of our fleets to the level we want is kind of foundational for what we do. I'm going to get off my little soapbox here on that one, and I'll hand it back to Amit.
Cool, thank you. And so, yeah, just to double down on the whole software update piece, there's a bunch of Apple people this week. That's your opportunity. Remember, again, double down, feedback. All right, so let's talk about the biggest thing that the biggest challenge that most companies face. And Salesforce, we face it as well too, right? We're not beating the standard by any way. But most people, I don't know if you know this, but most people forget their passwords. I don't know why. They either just changed it last night or they went on a 3-week vacation and they completely forgot their password. So we thought to ourselves, how is this affecting us? What is that workflow? And how can we resolve the issues that our users face when they forget their passwords? So, well, what usually happens is that the user calls tech support. And that conversation never goes well. That conversation, you first have to prove yourself, and then, they have to find your recovery key. But that recovery key, they read it to you over the phone, and that user, is that a 3 or is that a P? Is that an O or is that a 0? Where do I put the dashes? It's like, no, if you have to put the dashes in the wrong area, and you start the whole process over and over. They finally enter their file vault key, and then they have to set up their Mac passwords, AD passwords, and then, of course, their SSO sync. So at Salesforce, we decided to do some discovery work. 8,000 tickets in this past fiscal year. 8,000 tickets, that's huge. And also in my slides, I don't know if you know, there's a new feature in Keynote called animations. I went a little bit too crazy with the animations. So with 8,000 tickets, we saw 15 minutes just for one case. That's a lot of time, not just for our help desk staff, but for the user that's out of work. So naturally, there's got to be a better way. This was our Shark Tank moment. How can we fix this? So we thought to ourselves, after weeks and weeks of trying to resolve this, we said, what is our problem statement? What's our goal? Well, how about if we create a bot that surfaces the file vault key to the user with instructions on how to move forward, all within Slack? Salesforce, we own Slack. It's great. We're great. We use Slack everywhere. It's fantastic. So we have to drive user interaction to Slack. So we thought there and we said, all right, we got this bot. We have to come up with a really cool name. So our crack marketing team got together. We came up with the file vault key retrieval bot. It's the best we got. So I'm super excited to hand this off to Haley for her to show you how we did this, the workflow that it takes for our users to initiate this from their mobile device to get the file vault key and not have to call TechForce, which is, of course, our help desk. So Haley, why don't you show them?
Thanks, Amit. Hi, everyone, again. So I'm going to just go over a brief demo of the File Vault bot in action. So for this File Vault bot, there are 3 different ways you can trigger the workflow. So the first one is the app homepage. This displays some information around the bot, what it is, also contains some helpful links for the users that need additional assistance. And at the way bottom, we have a Reset Your Mac Password button. And when that is tapped, it starts the workflow. The user can also enter a / command from the Messages tab. And lastly, the user can @mention the bot. So if the bot is added to a designated Slack channel, perhaps a tech support channel, the user can @mention it, which will start a threaded response. And within that threaded response, there is a Reset Your Mac Password button as well. Once a user has triggered the workflow in one of those 3 ways, it displays a welcome view. This welcome view just provides a high level of what the bot is, and it also has a send octa push button. So this button is used for strong authentication, which is a requirement for the bot to proceed further. So once the user taps on that button, it automatically changes to this view here. This view just lets the user know that a push notification is being queued up to their 2FA device, and this view is strictly just for user transparency. Once that push notification is sent successfully, it refreshes to this view here. At this point, the bot just instructs the user to go ahead and approve that push notification from their 2FA device, and then come back to the Slack app to verify the status of it. Once that button is tapped, the bot will then verify the status to make sure that it has been accepted, and then it will retrieve MAC assets that are assigned to the user, formats it into serial numbers, and then adds it down into a drop-down menu, as shown here. At this point, the user then has to find their serial number that's located on their Mac, and then select the correct one in the drop-down menu. Now, it's not a guarantee that a user will have more than one Mac asset, but if you are maybe in software or in IT, there could be a handful of assets that are in that drop-down. For example, I have at least 5 at home, so I would have a lot to select from. And so once the user has confirmed that they selected the correct serial number, they'll want to tap Submit, which will then display a pre-launch checklist. This pre-launch checklist has 3 key elements. So the first one is to make sure that the serial number is accurate. While we do have those instructions on that previous screen, users love to skim, myself included, so we just added that check here again. And if for whatever reason the serial number is not accurate, they can tap the back button to select a different one from the drop-down menu. The second checkbox is to make sure the Mac is disconnected from all peripherals with the exclusion of power. Now, if it is a Mac desktop, they'll want to keep their keyboard, monitor, and mouse attached. And then lastly, it's to make sure the Mac is powered off. This really just streamlines the instructions that are displayed shortly, and it also guarantees that the users all start at the same point in this reset process. So once the user has confirmed that they meet these requirements, they would then tap Continue. At this point, processor-specific instructions are displayed. For this demo, it is Apple Silicon instructions, but regardless of the processor type, it has the same goal, and that is to get the Mac ready to take in that file vault key as shown on the screen. Once the user has completed those instructions, they'll then want to come back to the Slack app and tap Reveal File Vault Key. Once that button is tapped, there is a Jamf API call to retrieve that file vault key and then surface it to the end user in code format for readability. The user then would take that file vault key and input it into the Mac, and if for whatever reason it does not work, whether it's because it's the wrong serial number or maybe user input error, they can tap This Didn't Work in the corner, which closes down that view and sends a direct message for some additional support. For this demo, the file vault key does work, so the user would then just follow the instructions that are displayed. Once again, these are processor-specific instructions, but regardless of the processor type, it has the same goal, and that is to get the user ready to set a new Mac password, because at this point, the encrypted disk is now unlocked. So once they follow those instructions, they would then tap Continue, which will display the final view. This final view here just walks the user on setting that new Mac password and then logging back into the Mac with that password. And once they are able to log in successfully, they would just want to come back to this app here and tap Finish. Once they tap Finish, it will close down the view and then send a direct message for some final steps. At this point, there's really 2 scenarios that the user can encounter. So the first one is if they've forgotten their Active Directory password, which is the likely one, they'll want to reach out to tech support to get additional assistance to have that reset, and then use the SSO tool to sync the passwords. For the other scenario is if they're lucky and they remember their AD password, they just have to use the SSO tool. And then that concludes the workflow. Now, in order for us to get this production ready and operationalized, we used a number of services to do that, but today I'll be talking about 2 of those. So the first one is Slack. So we use the Slack platform to create and distribute our app across the workspace. We also use the Bolt framework, which can be developed in Python, Java, and JavaScript to essentially do all the heavy lifting that comes from the network side of things. So creating and maintaining that app connection in the workspace, while also having active listeners for those user interactions. We also used the Blockit, which is a UI framework. This UI framework just provides the building blocks to your user interface. So what was shown in the demo with the buttons, the text, the formatted file vault key, all of that came from Blockit. And we also use the Slack API to interact with the workspace. So we use the API to send direct messages, update views, along with a few other things. Now, this is just a really high-level overview of how we used Slack for this bot. There is a ton of information available online, specifically for development on how to use these key components. So for the final service, it's Jamf. So we used Jamf in a number of different ways for this bot. So we used it to retrieve the processor type of the selected asset. It was really crucial for us at a user experience perspective to make sure that we displayed processor-specific instructions. As we know, with this whole reset process, it can be a complicated one, and we wanted to reduce the chance of having misunderstandings with the instructions that are being displayed. Then we also used it to retrieve the file vault key via API. And not only did we use Jamf for that aspect, we also used Jamf to rotate the file vault key. So once that device comes online after setting that new MAC password, we do have a policy and some scoping set up so that the file vault key does get rotated. This really just guarantees that we are maintaining best security practices and standards within our Jamf environment. Now, to do a quick recap, because there was quite a few topics that I talked about today for file vault key. For this bot, we used strong authentication, which is Okta. We also use some APIs to retrieve the assets. And then once that asset is selected by that user, the bot then just walks the user through unlocking their encrypted disk with that file vault key, setting a new MAC password, and then logging back in where there's some final steps that are sent. And that is it. Back to you, Mitt.
Great, thank you. So let's just do a quick recap where we started this presentation and where we're ending. So as far as our agenda goes, well, we talked about Sidekick, our open source tool designed with the user in mind. You like that, right? Thought of it just now. Kickstart, which is our in-house tool to help with provisioning. We talked about how to engage with our end users. And then we finished it with our File Vault 2 bot. Now I want to remind you, we're just 3 people up here. We're part of a much larger team that we need to give a lot of recognition for. There we go. That's my team. I'm extremely grateful and honored to have such a wonderful team at the Mac and Salesforce team. So a big shout out to them. And lastly, I'd like to thank our partners. So thank you, Apple. Thank you, Jamf. Thank you, IBM, for the IBM notifier. That now we turned into Salesforce notifier, so we get most of the credit. It's fantastic. And so I want to thank all of you for coming in, to listen into our session. Everybody's streaming live. I appreciate you. And that QR code is right toward the Mac Admin Slack channel, where I have my entire team ready and waiting for any questions that you have from here on out. So I appreciate it. Thank you, guys.
Wonderful. Thank you guys so much. We do have some questions. And first off, for the Kickstart app, how do you prepare for cases where it fails and the user gets stuck?
So there's a lot that we have to build on the back end of Jamf to make sure that if Kickstart fails, it actually doesn't really matter. Because we're going to catch it on the end of then probably the next check-in. You know, we utilize smart groups in that manner. So if you're trying to install Slack and Slack for some reason doesn't work, well, we'll catch it on the next check-in that you don't have Slack, and we'll install Slack. So that's mainly how we catch those errors. There are, of course, the few ones that we have to get our help desk involved, but all in all, we catch it automatically.
Awesome. Next question. A bot that retrieves file vault keys, did security approve that?
we had a wonderful conversation with security that went back and forth, but internally at Slack, internally at Salesforce, we use Slack for a lot of things. So to answer your question in the easiest manner, yes, security approved it.
Awesome. Next question. How do you ensure Kickstart runs after setup? Including a script launch daemon as part of our pre-stage hasn't been the most reliable solution.
Yeah, so I think we've run into that before as well, but we are using a launch daemon and using the install applications process to run it right after enrollment. That's probably not the most detailed answer, but yeah, we haven't run into too many issues doing it that way.
Cool. Find them on Slack if you have follow-ups. So, we had a couple questions about Kickstart and the tool. One said, what tool are you using for Kickstart? Is it open source? Where can I find this tool to review? Another person said, is the open source app you use for that DEP Notify, set up your Mac, something else? So what's Kickstart? Is it open source?
So Kickstart is an in-house app that we created, Swift-based. It is not open source right now, but I promise the Jamf Nation community we're working on it. It's a lot more difficult for us than you think, but we are working on it.
Awesome. Next question. How successful do you find your users that go through the file vault process themselves? What is the success rate on self-service?
It's a fantastic question. So the data has shown that, so really we started this with a phased rollout, so I'll be completely honest with you. The file vault bot is fairly new. We're looking at a phased rollout of it just being there. Then we communicate with our users by promoting it via, different tools that we have via Slack channels, email, so on and so forth. And then the third is integrating that already with the AI bot we have for help. So the success rate so far has been tremendous. The overall adoption of it has been a little bit slower than we accommodated for, and that's just because of the fact we have a different bot that surfaces to the user when they have help. So to integrate with that bot to say, hey, I forgot my password, to then say, oh, cool, we're going to trigger the instance of the file vault recovery bot to give you your password. Because remember, the file vault recovery bot has to be pulled from your mobile device. Because obviously, if you got locked out of your password, you're not in your Mac. So overall, our feedback has been tremendous. We've gotten a lot of people back up and running, but the adoption, we are ramping up as we speak.
Someone wants to know, are you going to publish the file vault retrieval bot, make that open source?
We have all intentions to.
Cool.
Yeah, we have all intentions to, at least for Slack, at least, yeah.
Awesome. macOS updates using Nudge. Are all of your users local admins? Or if not, how does that work?
Yes, they are. We're all local admins.
Awesome. Just a couple more questions. Have you run into issues with users not seeing updates? No deferral set in any profiles. They simply don't even see it after a reboot.
So yes, but it's because we used to have deferral set, and then when we turned them off, it didn't honor that, and that's another one of those interesting, fun little wrinkles that we ran into with software update. Nudge would tell them that they needed to update, and then when they open system preferences, the update would not be there. I think that's the question, excuse me, that's being asked. That was more of a software update issue as opposed to a Nudge one. Yeah.
We got someone asking, what other Slack automations does SAP, I think you might mean Salesforce, but it says SAP, do with Jamf? Highly interested. We do some similar with manager approvals. So any other comments about Slack stuff?
I'll be honest, I'm not sure what the question is. Could you repeat it?
Yeah, what other Slack automations do you use with Jamf?
Okay, specifically with Jamf, this is the main one. But Slack automations in general, I mean, I would have a whole nother session just talking about Slack automations internally.
Cool. And then the final question, unless you guys have more, is how is the secure auth call invoked and checked?
Haley?
We use an internal API to do that with one of the services that our teams have. Don't have too much other information besides that. So yeah.
Reach out.
Yeah, we could talk one-on-one if you're here, or feel free to reach out via Mac admins. But we typically try not to give away all of our secrets to stuff like this in a open platform.
Then security will start saying no. When
Exactly.
You ask things,
Yeah,
right?
we don't want that.
Cool. That's all the questions I got on the app. Any questions from the room? Maybe someone couldn't get on the app, or any last-minute things for the folks here?
Yeah, I just wanted you to elaborate on how you fixed that deferral maybe getting stuck and it not being. Is there an easy?
There's no easy answer. The two things that we came across was at one point there was a command you could run to kind of jiggle the handle on the software update thing. Apple told us don't do that, so don't do that if you find it online. But reboots tend to help because it kind of refreshes that. What we think we were running into is software update kicks off and goes looking for updates and then hangs, and you can't get it to look while it's hung. So. And if it's not coming back with information, you just don't see anything. So a reboot will kind of, like I said, jiggle that handle and help. It's not the most scalable solution, but that's what we did find.
I'm going to come to you so that our live streamers can hear the question too. Excuse me.
Thanks. Yeah, so I had a question just for your notched MacBook users. Have you had any pushback, with our with the support app? Because anytime I deploy anything that includes another menu bar item, people get angry. So I just didn't know if you guys have any ways for prioritizing menu bar items or making sure that people can always see it, or how you guys deal with that.
Yeah, I mean, at Salesforce, we don't have a lot that lives up there. To be completely frank with you, it's pretty bare bones. We do also educate our users on how to customize and remove some of that stuff, especially the ones that are built into the Mac OS. But we have not heard that feedback, at least from my perspective. We have not heard about those notched users, saying that the menu bar is too crowded.
I know there's some open source stuff out there. I use something called Bartender. I think you have to pay for it. I don't remember, but yeah. Any other questions out there? Awesome. Let's give these folks another round of applause. Thank you. And we got lunch coming up next. Maybe some sessions this afternoon. Check out the expo hall. Otherwise, safe travels home, y'all.